and yeah, it's how I get driven. It was weird. Looking back on it, it's like I just don't feel like I'm that same person. But then maybe I still am the same person because last week I sold like 200 books, so like that also took a lot of drive. So I'm not the same person to do the interviews, but I am the same person to just obsessively do one thing.
Yeah. What's
Yeah.
the biggest thing that you've learned about yourself doing these interviews?
The biggest thing I learned about myself is that when I set my mind to something, I'm gonna do it. Like I mean, like because I was like, all right, I'm gonna do this many. I'm gonna immerse myself in this, and like it got to the point where I was like almost falling asleep during the interviews, and like I was like, no, I gotta stay awake, and I was sleeping between interviews, and I would I just I was so like determined to do it, and I was gonna do it, and yeah, I mean, I kind of knew that about myself, but like that was like the extent of it, like wow, I was really serious about this. But I worked much harder actually. In the summer 2019, when I was planning a trip for Cuba, um, curating a show at the DAW, making a documentary for Cuba, making a documentary for the thing at the DAW. So it was essentially like four separate projects. So like that, I actually worked harder in that period of time, and like I started like forgetting how to speak in that time period. So that was like kind of when I hit my wall, and so I learned where my wall was during that time period. And during the interviews, I didn't hit the wall, so I was like, okay, this is manageable for me. So I don't know. That's kind of what I learned in the last year and a half.
That's a big lesson. Did you find that it's easier when you're passionate about it, or it's just that drive built in to like to get to the end of that?
Oh man, I was so passionate about these interviews. I got a chance to interview Luis Rodriguez, to interview which I worked a lot. You worked a lot with Luis. I worked a lot with Luis. So it's always a big honor, but it's not shocking, right? It's not new in the same way some of the stuff is. But I got a chance to interview people that I don't know that well, that are also very very successful, like Norma Cantu. Like
Mm.
Jesus, right? I got a chance to interview her, and I didn't really know her at all. Luis Alfaro, like the playwright. So that was like to get a chance to talk to them for like an hour about their career and how they did what they did and why they did what they did and the decisions they made and how that affect later decisions like that. That was just like, who wouldn't be passionate about that?
So, what's like the most genuine thing you learned about people in your 200 and something interviews?
The most genuine thing I learned about people. I learned that I learned that people are different. That's what I did. People are interesting in different ways. Like that. I mean, honestly, like if I'm, like I can say something like really hallmarky, but like the honest truth is I learned just um, how people can be very very interesting in very different ways. And like for instance, like there's people who are professors, and like when you ask them a question, because I have an idea in my mind how the thing should go, but you ask them a question and they might answer one question for like 20 minutes, right? And they're saying all these interesting things you want to like follow up with, but they just keep going, right? And I don't want to be like starts like talking over them because they get a good flow. And other people, they're used to being interviewed and going on television, and so they answer things in like 30-second bursts, and their answers are great and they're complete, and there's nothing to add to them, right? So like instead of asking like 12 questions like I was prepared to do, I have to think of like 50 questions, right? And so like that was kind of interesting, just having to like figure that out on the spot. It's just really seeing just like the breadth of just how different people are from one another. You know what I'm saying? And I don't mean like this guy's white and this is a Chicana and this is a African American woman and her. It's not like demographic. I mean, just on an individual level, people are just different, but very interesting, you know. So and the same, they're the same too. And that was also interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is an interview about you. And I believe we are live. So we are live. We are joined this hour by Francisco Escamilla, better known as the Busstop Prophet. And he is a performer, a performance artist, a poet, a writer, a workshop leader, a mentor of the youth, a visionary, an incredible poet, and a bus stop prophet. So before we get into all the kind of cool adventures and highlights of your writing career, before we get into all that, Frankie, can you tell us a little bit about how you got started? Like, when did you start writing poetry?
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Thank you for doing this, brother. I've enjoyed watching you interview a lot of people that are dear to my heart, and you're dear to my heart, and so I appreciate, being able to to speak on this. My origin story goes, I mean, goes back to growing up in Wyvenwood down here in Boyle Heights, and finding writing as a healing practice before I knew it was that. I my father was sick. He was a drug addict, and that affected our household. That affected my life deeply, and so I had a lot of anger in me, and I would act out. And I remember this one specific time that I had acted out, and I don't remember what I did. I was always getting into trouble. Um, and I got spanked. My mom spanked me, and she sat me on the stairs to think about what I did. But instead of thinking about what I did, I thought about how angry I was at her for hitting me. Um, and when she came back to ask if I was ready to talk about it, I told her no. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to talk about it. And she told me that it was okay to be angry, but it wasn't okay to stay angry, to remain angry. And she gave me a pencil and a paper, and she said, "So if you can't talk it out yet, write it out." And that's really where my writing started. I was about 7 or 8, and it of course I didn't do it at the time because I was still angry, but in that action, it gave me a permission. It gave, she gave me permission, and then I gave permission to myself to be able to express myself in whatever shape or form that it needed to be expressed. So that's like the origin of where I got invited into this practice of writing. Um, and I used it throughout I used it to keep me sane. I used it to help me navigate in the world that I was living in. I was, involved with a little bit with gangs, and what was happening in my neighborhood, and it always kept me sane. It always, it was my North Star. And eventually it led me to stepping outside of my neighborhood, to stepping outside of the block that I was taught. It was dangerous to leave. It was dangerous to leave that block. There was so much that could happen. Within half a block, you cross into another gang neighborhood. Within half a block, you cross into someone's territory, and you can get hurt. And when I trusted that, when I trusted that writing, when I trusted that action, it started leading me outside of the world that I knew, and allowed me to enter into worlds that I only imagined existed. Right. So like, um, I remember this very specific time. Um, I just lost one of my homeboys. He was young. He was about 17. He had just graduated high school. He was going to college, and he was brilliant, man. He was this brilliant dude. His name was Danny, and it hit me so hard that it made me look at what I was doing and how I was living in my life in an entirely different way. Um, and he was this phenomenal artist, right? He was just this phenomenal artist, and I used to share some of the stuff that I wrote with him. And of course, we hadn't called it poetry at the time, right? Because poetry to us, well, that was taught to us in school was, all these older white men like Whitman and Shakespeare, and what I wrote didn't sound like that. So I used to call what I wrote shit, right? I used to tell my homies, "Yo, you want to hear some shit I wrote?" And I would often share it with them. And I shared it with Danny a few times, and we had these really amazing conversations. And so to lose him, to lose this guy that we thought was making it out, just it shifted something in me, and I had to step away from that life. I had to have this realization that the gift that I had was meant to build community, was meant to build opportunity, not to create more violence and loss. So yeah, so I started writing, bro, and I started taking the bus outside my neighborhood, and I would travel wherever. I would just get on random lines and take off. And I remember this one instance where I was sitting on this bus stop with this woman, and I turned to her and I smiled, and she kind of got nervous. I still look like a little thug. I mean, I was just stepping out of the life, and she kind of got nervous and tightened up and moved away from me, and it hurt me. Like, it hurt me so deep, brother. And not that I didn't understand why that was happening. You know, I understand, like, in this world, you know, we have so many reasons to be afraid, but it hurt me because I was offering a gesture, and we as two human beings couldn't just sit and talk to each other and smile at each other. So I that that hit me deeply, and for the next couple of weeks, I was just letting that marinate. And the next time I was on a bus stop, I was sitting there with four people. There was an older woman, there was this man, and there's two younger dudes, and no one was speaking to each other. And I remember feeling this fire in me, Matt. You know, like something has to change. There's something not right about this. You know, we're sitting here with our hopes, with our dreams, with our lives, with our stories, and we can't talk to each other. So I knew I had to do something, and I stood up on that bus stop, and I didn't know what I was gonna do. So I just stood up, and then I just started reciting, you know, spitting something that I wrote, and I don't even remember what it was, man. I felt like I just felt like a surge of fire and energy in me that needed to come out. And at first, people were looking at me and as if I was doing something incredibly strange, which I guess I was, you know, for people just sitting there minding their own business. But something beautiful happened afterwards is that I noticed people started to listen, you know. And so as I'm finishing my piece and feeling all this vulnerability, you know, feeling on fire, I sit back down and it's quiet for a few seconds. And then the lady, she tells me, she's like, "Mijo, did you write that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I wrote that. That's my one of my pieces." And she's like, "I really like that, you know." And then the man said, "Hey, I like this line where you said this." And everybody started talking, man, on that bus stop, and I felt like so empowered. I felt like I was stepping into my gift, right? Like that action, like something had to die on that bus stop in order for that to be born. And so I kept doing it, bro. You know, I kept doing it, and so there's a bunch of small moments that make up the origin of my writing, but those are some key ones.
What would you say that earlier you mentioned you didn't call them poems, you called it shit. So what did your early shit sound
Probably like shit.
like?
It was passionate, you know.
Yeah,
It was incredibly rhymy.
yeah.
Um, you know, truthfully, my biggest influences were like Shel Silverstein, right? Like my first exposure to poetry was I remember going into our shitty ass library at my elementary school, and that didn't have a great collection of books, and I found Where the Sidewalk Ends, and it flipped the script for me. Right? I'm like, oh, it can be fun, it can be heartfelt. So a lot of my stuff was talking about the anger that was living inside of me, right? But some of it, a lot of it came out humorous because that's how we handle things in, you know, in our neighborhood. We have to laugh at it sometimes
Right.
uh, to ease the pain. But yeah, so it sounded. I don't even remember, brother. Like the hard part is that we, you know, growing up, we were homeless a couple times, and so we had to put all our stuff into storage. And a few times we lost our storage, so I lost all my notebooks. You know, so I lost a lot of that stuff, or rather, it was, I guess, offered. It was an offering to the gods of poverty. You know.
Well, you mentioned. I mean, I want to get into like how you got the name Busstop Profit. Obviously, we're leading into that and some other things, and about like kind of like how you kind of started doing kind of this interesting career trajectory, like at laundromats and stuff like that. But I want before we do that, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about this. You mentioned libraries, and it seems like right now there's a lot going on right now talking about the funding the police. Now, when I look at Boyle Heights specifically, I see a library that looks like a jail and I see a jail that looks like a museum. I mean, there's so much money being funneled to police and so little, and it's so into the public public library and the public infrastructure with or just the part that would stimulate not just a child but everybody's mind. There's so little given to that and so much given to force and whatever. So can you speak a little bit to that? I mean, because
I
so
mean,
stark in Boyle Heights. Because you said that the police station is like it looks like a museum. So much money being poured in, and then you look at the library. It's like it looks like a jail.
yeah, the first time I got detained At Hollenbeck, it didn't look like that, right? If it did, I think my experience would have been a little bit different. But I mean, it's incredibly frustrating. It's incredibly frustrating to see how the city uses money. It's incredibly frustrating to see all these butterfly bike lock holders down the street that costed $1 million. You know, when libraries, when schools are so underfunded. Um, so I can speak to my frustration, right? I can speak to how I am excited about the movements that's happening, right? That has been happening for a long time, and but we have to be more vocal. You know, we have to hold people accountable for where this money is going, because they're not investing in our youth, right? And we have to. It's like the indigenous saying: we have to invest 7 generations into the future. You know, and we haven't been doing that. You know, I mean, Roosevelt. I went to Roosevelt High School, and I go visit that campus, and it looks exactly the same as when I was there. And what is that telling their, you know, our children? You know, what kind of opportunity is it creating in their head? It's so hard, man. We live in this fantasy world now, right? And the fantasy is written by someone else. It's always that narrative is always written by someone else, and they write the story of our young people, you know, and it's only in one direction, the direction that they want, the direction that keeps them from having power and keeps other from, you know, and keeps others over them, you know. So it's like, how are our young people supposed to thrive if they're always being fed a fantasy and never having their imagination exercised? You know, that's what we need in the world right now. So like, yeah, this money, right, this funding should all go into investing in our young people, which means investing in our neighborhoods, which means bringing healthy food into the neighborhood, which means not wasting money. Art is not a waste of money, but when you are not commissioning the artists from the neighborhood, you know, who have been here, who have been working with young people, who imagine seeing their neighborhood, this pueblo, in an entirely different way, then we're doing a disservice, right? But it's I mean, it's conscious. It's conscious, right? Like they do it on purpose. It's not an accident, you know. But it's all incredibly frustrating to me. You know, growing up here, you know, seeing now how they're investing because we're being gentrified because of different people are moving into our neighborhood. Um, and now they're trying to make the streets safer for them when they could have made them like that years ago, right? They could have invested in after school programs and art programs, right? We don't have those conversations. You know, it's not until something of value can be taken from us that people start paying attention. That's not for the right reason. So I mean, there's so much to say about that. You know, I'm glad that the mayor cut the budget. Now he needs to do it more.
Yeah,
You know.
for sure, definitely. All right, but Frankie, the bus stop profit. So how did you get the name, the bus stop profit? Kind of seems like you were going into that with this incident. So tell us
Yeah, I just gave you like a matrix view of my
exactly
life.
yeah. Where's the Clark Kent moment with the glasses come off and you bust up to the phone? Let's hear it.
Um, I was so I was on a bus stop over here in it's still Boyle Heights. It's still it's over there by what street is that? Anyway, it's on that side of Boyle Heights, and I'm sitting there with this elder, with this man, and we're on this bus stop for like 2 hours, man. Like no joke. Like this bus just forgot about us. It's you know the bus stops that don't have the sign, and if the bus driver don't remember, he just drives on through. We were on one of those bus stops, and I'm sitting with this brother, with this elder, and we start talking, and we start talking about the politics of the times. We start talking about spirituality, about the neighborhood, you know, about raza, about what that means. And he's dropping science, and I'm sharing what I know. And at some point, I asked him, "Can I share something I wrote with you?" And he said, "Yes, please." Right. Um, and so I shared a poem with him. Um, and at the end of the poem, he just stood quiet, which is always an interesting thing when you're a young person, right? Because when someone stays quiet, we're not necessarily taught that there are moments of awe in life. So there's so much room you know, for insecurity and vulnerability. But he stood quiet, and then he just looked at me and he said, "You're the bus stop prophet." And and I remember feeling like I got like knighted, you know, if the spirit or the universe awakened his thought for a second to remind me what I came into the world for. So I was like, cool, then that's what I'm gonna be. Um, you know, and I take that, I took it very seriously, right? Because we all can be prophets, man. We're all prophets to each other. So I was like, okay, well, allow me to use my words to try to bring better things into the world. So that's that story.
So okay, so you get your start. You're doing poetry, but you're doing these unconventional places, bus stops. I've heard legends of laundromats, like
Taco shops,
taco
taco
shops,
truck.
taco
Um,
trucks. Yeah, yeah. So in these early days, were there ever any like adverse responses? Like, hey, bro, I'm trying to eat my carne asada here. Was there any like, or was it always all love?
it was always a surprise to people,
Yeah,
right? And I think people deep down appreciate that, right? There is an, like, again, that awe that I was speaking of. I think when we do unexpected things in unexpected places, sometimes
yeah,
it awakens the young person in people, you know, and that young person is ready for that to happen, even if we're not aware of it. And so even though sometimes it was met with fear, you know, like, or rather shock, or sometimes with even aggression, right? Sometimes I did it in places where there was homies, where there was gangsters, you know, and and you know, gangsters speak with a specific language, you know, and sometimes we lead with aggression, you know, but it's not aggressive, right? It's just the way that the language spoke. But I always got, Will, what's up, homie? That shit was dope, right? And so like, I think also, like, living where I live, growing up how I did, and having the experience that it did, you know, it allowed me to both have patience and understanding, and not judge, like, you know, books by their cover, right? Or to not to understand energy in a whole different way, right? To know that if someone comes up in a certain way, you know, that there's curiosity in that, even if there's fear, right? And so then I have the responsibility of inviting them into a deeper place, or rather the opportunity, not responsibility, but the opportunity to invite them into a deeper place and a deeper type of conversation. So sometimes, you know, sometimes that's the thing, man, and you know this, like, when we step into these places, like, I wear my heart on my sleeve, you know. I tell my story, and I tell it all, and I'm honest about it. And when we do that, when we share our stories, when we share our wounds with each other, it gives people permission to do the same thing, right? They connect in a way that maybe they never have before, right? Maybe they've never given themselves, or no one's ever given them that permission, you know, to access that part of their being, and they're like, whoa, there's an opportunity in this. There's an opportunity, and something's being reflected at me, and I'm given this opportunity to grow, right? So I'm not gonna say I never have, right? Like, there's been, you know, one or two times when we, you know, when you step into this type of work, whether, you know, through poetry, and it's all kinds of things. The healing work, you know, poetry is therapy. Poetry is, there's so many things that energies get attracted to you, you know, and sometimes those energies are incredibly out there, you know, and you just have to learn to be patient,
yeah.
and you know, and the more it happens to me, the better I got at navigating it. So
Yeah, no, no. Like, and the funny thing is, I believe you because if most people told me what you just told me, I would think they were lying. But I believe you because I've seen it, right? I remember when we were at the East Side Love one time, during the open mics they used to have there over at East Side Love. It was you, me, and David Romero. I don't know if you remember this, but like there was a hostile audience. They just did not want it. They wanted to have their drinks and the portrait. In some ways, like I understand that. Like I'm interrupting your party. I get it, right? Like, but somebody told me there was an open mic and they set it up, so like they're the ones, not me. I'm an instrument of their folly. But so my strategy was to yell over all of them, and that did not work at all, right? And then so like it's kind of like I went up, I tried yelling over him, failure. Dave Romero goes up, he's like, all right, I'll tell some jokes, right? I'll tell them some jokes that'll like that's a new strategy, right? I'll make them like me, and then they'll want to be quiet. I'm like, okay, different strategy, better success, but still did not have a hush over the crowd. You got up there and you walked across the bar until they were silent, making eye contact with everyone. And you began, or not everyone because it was packed, right? But like with, enough of them, right? Who would then in turn make eye contact with them around them, right? So by proxy, you made eye contact with everyone in the bar. And then you begin your poem. And there's one guy who rebels and he just wants to start talking. Everyone's shh. And you looked at him and said, I love you. And he stopped. And I've never seen anything like that. And he was one of these dudes with like a polo shirt with the collar turned up, and he could have been from like across the way. I mean, he could have been really from across the street. I'm not implying anything that he was, whatever. But I'm just saying, like, he was, he was dressed that night to be somebody. Maybe he wasn't, maybe he wasn't, right? Like, like all like, I don't know, like a bro or something, but a Chicano bro or something, But like, but but you looked him dead in the eyes and said, "I love you," and he stopped talking and just like watched like everyone else. I've never before or since seen anything like that.
That was a good memory, brother. Yeah, I do. I remember that. I hadn't thought about that in years. Those were good times. Those were pre Corazón del Pueblo days. That's actually I do remember that. That was a beautiful moment. Yeah, I remember your frustration too. Thinking about it now. I remember
Wait, wait.
how angry you were.
I was mad. Yeah, yeah. I got mad, because I was generally mad at the time. I got on stage and then, like, I was doing some certain things and I was getting probably too much. I was getting too much too soon. I was getting too much notoriety. I got a big head and I got really humbled by, by a Taco Tuesday, by a 2 drink special. I got really humbled that night. And I was not prepared to be humbled in such a manner. And yeah, I got mad and I only got madder. But and then you did that, and I wasn't angry when I saw that. I wasn't like jealous. I wasn't ever. I was just like, I just was like, how the fuck did he do that? I need to learn how to. And I know, and I still haven't learned how to do that. But like at that level, anyways. But that was, I've never seen anything like it before or since. That was incredible.
Thank you. Thank you for the memory, brother. I do. Matt. I do my best to lead with my heart, bro. I came into this world with a giant heart, and I know this. I'm super sensitive, and my neighborhood, the culture, it tried to take that from me. It tried to beat it out of me. Um, even my parents, as they didn't know how to handle that type of sensitivity, or see it as a gift, right? So I had to hide, and I had to work through my shame with it. But the truth is I've learned whenever we plug our heart into anything that we do, whenever we lead from that space, right? That people meet you there. So it comes down to like, what's your invitation and what's your offering? And if you pose a genuine enough, like loving enough invitation, and you offer that to an individual, they meet you there.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure that dude, bro, I'm sure that dude's never been told that, you know, that somebody loved him. I don't, maybe he never been told that by another man. I don't know. I just know that I meant it.
I've never been told by a poet walking across the bar that they love me. I do poetry for a living, and it still hasn't happened to me. So I was blessed. Um, okay, so you mentioned Corazon del Pueblo, and I want to talk about what a seminal and important spot that was. But before Corazon del Pueblo, I used to run into you, and you were kind of like with a crew of different poets. I would always often see you with I'm gonna mess up his name. I think Jared Birdsong.
Yeah,
Jared,
some black spinach.
Black Spinach,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
as well as Mike Sonskin, Mike the Poet. So, and Corey Kofer would show up from time to time, to kind of guest star this episode, guest starring Corey Kofer. He Best kept would make an appearance. So, can you tell us a little bit about like those early days and just some of the circuit that that you would frequent? Like, what are some of the different open mics in that, like, kind of mid 2000s that were kind of popping at the time?
For sure, bro. For sure. That's yeah. That's, you know what? I have to take it a little bit back, because when I was, it's so amazing. It's like it's serendipitous how it happens, right? But when I was taking those buses everywhere, like I was saying, one time I was taking a bus down to Melrose to go buy some comic books, right? And I ended up getting on the short line, um, and I got off. It let me off on Vermont by the Braille Institute. So I was like, okay, well, the next bus is like a half hour away. Let me walk around, and I ended up walking in the back of the Braille Institute and found out the LECC was there. And I walk into the admissions office to ask a question, and they signed me up for school, bro. So then, like, through that experience, I got to meet some other friends there, which eventually led to being part of this art collective called the Lost Marbles Collective. That was some dudes from South Pass, from Highland Park, because I didn't know anybody in my neighborhood that was doing this stuff. I couldn't find mics there, so I started doing that, and we started doing art shows, and then eventually I was like, man, I'm loving this. I want to keep finding places. Not really ever being to an open mic. Like one of the open mics that the first open mic that I went to, I think was called, yeah, it was from New Earth, right? New Earth Expression Mondays. That was one of the first open mics that I went to. But then I went to this other one down by Mama's Hot Tamales. There used to be a bookstore. I forget what it was called, but they had an open mic on Wednesday nights, and it was put on by a bunch of breakdancers, and that was super dope. And I ended up meeting this amazing poet, Saria. Do you know Saria Idan? So Saria Idan,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and
Musician too, right?
huh?
Musician too, right?
Yeah, she's a musician too.
Yeah, man.
Um, yeah, I met her. She had just come from New York, bro. By some chance, she was at that same open mic, and we exchanged information and ended up becoming friends. And she told me about this other open mic at this spot called 33 and the Third Bookstore, and that was on Alvarado and Sunset, or off of Sunset. And she told me that her friend was the host, and he was this dude named Mike the Poet. And I was like, cool, like I'm gonna go down there. And I said, how am I gonna recognize him? She's like, oh, he has the most beautiful bluest sky eyes. So I go and I'm looking at everybody's eyes, bro, because I'm like, I'm like, who got the most beautiful blue sky eyes? And Mike was outside, bro, with his little notebook and signing people up for the list. And that dude, bro, man, I got mad love for Mike the Poet. That dude's my brother, man. He's just a super dope, knowledgeable dude, poet, and he was hosting at that time, bro. He was hosting everywhere, right? So I did that mic, and we hit it off, and that dude would hit me up and be like, "Yo, Busstop, we're gonna be having this mic over here in Highland Park at the, what was that called? It was called the Blue. I'm forgetting names, Matt. It was a super dope open mic. It was in this little clothes store. And that's where I got to meet, a Sarah Cruz, Strychnine, and then Philharmonic, right? Philharmonic's a legend too, bro. I once seen Philharmonic do like a 37-minute poetry set. but yeah, bro. So I started going with Mike, and then I got to meet Corey. I met Lee Ballinger, and Lee Ballinger was a big fan of Corey's spot, of Best Kept Spot, Micah Dim Lights. And I got to go out to Micah Dim Lights, and then we would rock. And Mike, between all of them, there was always something going on. So there was college gigs that came up, and we would go perform at colleges. We would, they had already been doing it for a while, under the name of the Poets of the Round Table, which was super dope, bro. Like when I heard that, I was like, bro, I'm gonna mess with these dudes. Being a little bit of a nerd, I was like, what, Round Table, King Arthur, what? We're gonna be knights. so yeah, man. And then we got to do the Talking Drum. That was downtown in that little alleyway, that coffee shop. And and that's where I got to meet like Blackbird. Man, whatever happened to Blackbird? I don't know, but that dude was bad. He was awesome, man. And then we did the Talking Stick. You used to frequent that too. I think you used to host that one too, right? The Talking Stick in Venice, with Nikki Black and Naj. Um, and then Sarah Cruz had her spot, which I eventually helped started co-host, was Organic Soul Movement, and that was in Culver City. That was amazing, bro. That one was really close to my heart. I feel like with all that network, brother, like we started like this community, right? This like it was like this family, so it felt like going to church, right? Like every Tuesday we come up and everyone was there and the crowd was so supportive, and it was so different from the slam scene that was happening at the time, um, which just felt more like home to me, right? Because I'm I like using poetry to build, and I mean the slam scene was dope too, but it just wasn't. I didn't want to compete, right? I wanted to give, and that's where my heart was. So I didn't really get into the slam open mics at the time, but Organic Soul Movement, man, that was the spot, bro. Like I remember you came through a few times. Um, so did Dave. I think is that. I think that's most of them.
So what was that spot that was down the alley? And there was like there was a I don't remember the name of the place. I remember they closed it. The
Yeah, the
business
cafe. It was the Lost Souls Cafe.
Lost Souls Cafe. That came up in some other conversation. I couldn't remember it. Lost Souls Cafe.
That was the Talking Drum. That was the one that Jared Birdsong did, and
Yeah,
eventually I started helping to host that one too.
yeah. And that was like but they used to host a number of things. I remember during Art Walk they would have like readings there too, and they would have like shows and just like kind of just general open mics. It was always kind of general, kind of like a downtown kind of cool place to be. I think Lady Vasco actually started her open mic there, and then ended up moving it to, or was going to start it there, but then they closed, and she ended up moving to Last Bookstore or
Mm.
something like that. So like that the Lost Souls Cafe's got a pretty rich history, but it's like it's it's just at the its end is at the beginning of my time, so I don't even know who to ask, like about like the history of the Lost Souls Cafe. So that's kind of a little mystery for me right now.
Jared, man, you gotta get Jared on one of these. Jared Birdsong can tell you everything.
All right, that's
No,
good advice. Good advice.
but it was the spot, bro. Like that was the. I mean, that was the one I used to go to all the time. Was the Talking Drum, um, and we had La Santa Cecilia in there. We had everyone. There's a lot of amazing artists that are really doing well right now. That
Yeah,
that started out in these spots. So it was really dope
yeah. There,
time.
there was a lot of like musical acts too. So I remember doing something in Chinatown, or I don't know if I was part of the lineup, but I remember going to Chinatown and seeing Marisol. And I think you were hosting, or Mike was hosting, or somebody was hosting something, and it was like poetry slash this slash that slash. There was a lot of variety shows back in those days. I don't know. Did you ever
Peter
did you,
Peter
did you ever do
Woods.
did you ever do one of Robert Beanie's?
I did one. I did one to Robert Beatties.
So because of Robert Beanie, right, I can say that I have opened up for the sexy sax man. Before he was a sexy sax man, before when he was doing Push Play LA, right, was the name of his band, and Sergio Flores, and he was doing this experimental jazz with the. I mean, he's actually an extremely talented saxophone player, and like, but he showed up like the sexy sax man. So I think he may have been filming for the sexy sax man in the period of time when he did the show. So it was like kind of, you know, just say yes, man. Like you never know, you might end up, sharing the stage with the sexy sax man.
Oh, that's so dope, man.
Yeah, yeah. So let's get to it, man. Let's talk about Corazon del Pueblo. Like so this opens up. What are we talking like 2008, 2000? No, we're talking like 2009, 2010.
Yeah, about
Around that.
2000.
Okay, 2009, 2010. Um, giant. I remember the opening event. Just like it was packed from people from miles around. And you were the host. How did that all come together? Tell us about that. That the opening of Corazon del Pueblo, the grand opening.
Yeah, you know what? It
Poetry.
was it. I think it started with like a lot of artists who were hanging out at East Side Love, that open mic that you're talking about. And Abel Salas had come in, he was frequenting the space and the bar, and I think they started renting that space as like an artist salon, like under the name Brooklyn and Boyle, which is, presently his magazine, his newspaper. Um, and I they came to a point where they didn't have, he didn't have the money to sustain it by himself anymore, I think. And so they brought some other artists in. I was in on some of the initial meetings, but I had not, like, I wasn't part of like the collective to, the collective sustainers. But I knew Abel, and I came to some of his other events, and so I think one time, they were having an event. It was an early one. It was an early Corazon del Pueblo one. It was actually before the one I think you're talking about, and and I went in there and I did a poem, um, and I talked about being from the neighborhood, and a poem, and I got to meet Leon and Ileana and Skyra and Paco, and I think it was also Abel, and I think Josefina Lopez was originally one of the first sustainers of that spot too. And so that, we had a meeting after, and they were like, yo, it was really dope. We want to see if it was me, it was Johnny DeLuna, and it was Christy Lovich, and they asked us, if we wanted to to host like a poetry night, and I was like, yeah, like I'd been doing it at this point, I'd been doing it for years, I'd done it at Tribal Cafe, I did it in the Valley. I used to work for Tia Chuchas, and I had, I was their program coordinator, and I used to do it there. So I was like so excited to be doing it in my home, in my neighborhood, So I was like, yeah, I'm with it, and there was a lot of meetings, bro. A lot of meetings, but it was I think it was a beautiful time, and it really allowed me to create something there using my gifts and my skills, but also my network, so I was able to bring other artists from across Los Angeles in and expose, the people in my neighborhood to them, and then vice versa, so I know like that helped out a lot of people, right? A lot of people got to go and feature at different spots from Boyle Heights that maybe would have never ventured out of Boyle Heights, and and I got to bring a lot of people that I love into into that space, and feature them there, and really give them a sense of a taste of what it means to build community, So it was a phenomenal time. Eventually, Johnny and Christy, they stepped down. They didn't want to. Had other things going on in their life, so I became the sole host. But it's always been my practice, bro, to help build the foundation, to help establish something, and like, get the garden going, and then to pass it on, like, because it was never about me. It's not like the Busstop show, it was about giving to the community and allowing other people the opportunity to stretch and grow. So, by me stepping, I think I did it for about a year and a half, where I was the host, and then I passed, and then I let go of that position, and I still went and supported, but it, other people got, like Sammy got to host, and like, you got to host, and other people came in. I think you and I hosted a couple of them together, actually.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then Daniel Morales Leon was hosting with Chapolin, which was just,
That's your dude, right? That's your homie.
that was not to anybody's that was a kind of a debacle a little bit, but um I mean, because like we're all a little tipsy back then, but like that guy, kind of tipped over the jar there, but yeah, no, Daniel, beautiful soul. Anyhow, I'm not gonna get into that. I'm not gonna. I don't want to sully your interview with my grudges.
We'll just wait for that interview. I'm gonna tune into that one.
Oh man, I will be prepared. Oh man, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but that was my
you
largest
see some of those
contribution.
episodes of Larry King get awkward. I mean, you didn't see nothing. But who are some of the poets that you've met? I mean, I know that you that I had an opportunity to interview Shilalik, and she mentioned that having met you at Corazon del Pueblo and becoming kind of good friends, but also kind of like mm, people that like bounce ideas off each other in terms of writing, like who are some of the poets that you met through Corazon del Pueblo that you might not have met otherwise?
Actually, I didn't meet Citlali at Corazon. We met.
She messed up.
Yeah, she messed up. I'm gonna watch her interview and I'm gonna take notes. Uh, no, we met at a performance in the Valley at a college. She was performing. I saw. No, we both performed that day, and then eventually Corazon and stuff like that. But yeah, she's. I met her there. I met a lot of the people that you talked about, Chapulín. Um, who else? I think just the regulars, man. A lot of the people, like a lot of the poets I had known from other places, but I think like mostly it was just the regulars that came around. Like what was his name? I can't remember this one dude's name, but Sammy. Sammy's a powerful poet, man. I remember, he's a powerhouse at a young age. He came in. He was one of the youth that came in. That ended up becoming a sustainer of the spot, but he was always just like a really powerful performer. Who else? I'm trying to think. Do you remember some people?
That I met at Corazon? I mean, I don't know. I mean, you might have different. I'm pretty sure I met Shalalik at Corazon myself. I met this dude, eyes wide shut, or eyes wide open. He was pretty good, but then like he had some issues. But like but he was a pretty powerful poet. Sammy, of course. Johnny Barrios,
Johnny Burial, yeah.
Leon. I mean, geez, how can you not mention Leon?
Yeah, I met all those people, man. All the you're my cheat sheet, bro.
Yeah, and honestly, like a lot of the people I may have met somewhere else, but like a lot of the relationships were kind of were more solidified, at Corazon after hours, like,
Oh yeah,
like that, like the poetry nights, they would, there'll be an after party. It would last a little bit, but like the fandangos and stuff, those would go like 6 in the morning. Those,
all night, bro.
yeah.
I mean, it was a beautiful time, and it was, it was trial and error, like there were a bunch of different human beings trying to create something good in this one space, and human beings are flawed. We make mistakes and we learn from them and we grow, yeah. But there was some really beautiful moments that happened there. I loved see Lali's my homie, bro, and I loved hosting with her. She's really a hard worker, and she's really amazing creative, you know so those were some really special times. I know my friend Rebecca Gonzalez came through there a few times. Iris
And it.
Iris de Anda.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm warming up, bro. Now the memory is warming up.
What about a Rooster? Where's Rooster
That's
at?
who I was thinking about. I was trying to remember what I was thinking other names and I didn't want to say them. So I was like, okay,
Yeah.
Matt will eventually bring it up.
Yeah. Have you seen? I mean, have you seen the guy?
I haven't seen anybody. I
Okay.
haven't seen anybody in so long. I mean, I also met those dudes. What are they called? The dudes that play the paranas. The ones that used to have the fandangos there.
The guys from I don't remember who was in the Fandangos. Was it Cafeteras? Was it
Yeah,
like
los cafeteras were one of them that did it.
yeah?
I met all of them there. That's where I got to meet them. I got to meet a few celebrities there, bro. I met there was always these Latino celebrities popping up every once in a while.
Oh yeah. I remember. I would always remember. One of my biggest memories was I remember Richard Montoya coming in, and like it was one of my first times I ever saw him. I mean, we didn't really meet, so I can't say I met him, but I mean, we kind of just see him, and he reminded me so much of The Godfather Part Two, like Don Fanucci, like he was like walking around like kissing babies, and as Richard Montoya tends to do, very like. But it was really cool. He's a cool guy. I mean, that was I remember him being part of the fundraisers. Him and Luis and and Josefina Lopez. They were they were they
Mm.
were they did one of the really big fundraisers. Speaking of Luis, so I'm kind of going to go a little backwards to go forward, right? So like after Corazon, you get a kind of a pretty you're doing this really impactful work now with street poets. You've been doing that for a number of years. But how did the work before that, before you did street poets, like you mentioned, you were the program coordinator for Tia Chuchas, but I also remember you kind of like doing different things with Luis in terms of like healing, kind of using poetry as healing arts and for a lot of like traumatic, especially people who've been involved in life, people who've been involved in certain like young men who had like kind of just done some self-destructive stuff, right, at an earlier point in their life. Like you were a big part. So can you talk a little bit about the time working with Luis and how that may have influenced your later work with street poets?
Yeah, most definitely. Man, I've been really blessed to have some phenomenal mentors, right? Which I didn't see as mentors at the time, but I got to meet Louis because of Lee Ballinger, right? But Lee was really excited to have us to meet, so I got to sit with him when I was 20. I don't know, I was 25, I think 26, and I got to sit and just talk with Louis. And of course, reading his book when I was younger, like it was Louis is like he's the humble godfather, right? Like he's the godfather of of poetry. So I was just so amazed at how approachable he was, right? And how like caring and like how active he was and really trying to create community. So I met him then, and then later it happened at the same time. I was doing the poetry thing, and I was working with Aquila Sherrills, and Aquila Sherrills is he was one of the two people responsible for the Watts Peace Treaty in '92 between the Bloods and the Crips. And I was working with him at this thing called the Reverence Project, which was something that he was creating, which was a truth and restorative justice um, organization, right? So I got to go to South Africa with him and interview people from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and I almost got to meet Desmond Tutu, but I was excited, but it just didn't happen. He was not there that day. But I got to really get an understanding of where restorative justice, the idea originated, right, with this Truth and Reconciliation Commission and their practices, and I got to hear stories. And at the same time, I was, working with my friend Herman had hit me up, and he was the program coordinator at the Achuchas, and he was leaving. He recommended me, and Louis knew me, so it was a pretty good fit, and I got to go and work, as their coordinator, and I got to work with Trini, who's phenomenal, who's also been a mentor to me, and phenomenal poet and person and human being, like, and through conversations with them and their indigenous practices, like I learned so much, and it really aligned with what I was with the philosophies that I already navigated with, right? Because man, I was doing classes like when I was doing classes when I was living in the hood, for the kids in the hood, because there was nothing else. So we would sit in fields and write and create and do stuff. So it was really beautiful to meet people who were doing this on a different level, right? And then I got to do certain rituals and learn certain things about indigenous culture and practice, which is very special and connects to my heart. So I got to do Sweat Lodge with Luis, um, which is just a phenomenal. Have you done a Sweat Lodge, man? Bro, we got
No.
to get you in there, bro. We got to get you in there. But it was just it's just it was a beautiful experience, man, and to see how Louis and Trini navigated, and just to hear Louis's story, right, and to see him always showing up in that way was really incredibly beautiful. So that was a really powerful time in my life, right, where I had those two individuals, Luis Rodriguez and Akita Sorrells, um, exposing me to these different ways of thinking, these different ways of practicing community, um, and then just trusting my own intuition, right? Trusting my own process and knowing that every person has to find their own path, right? We get this information and then we have to start to design, you know, how we're going to show up in the world, the language that we're going to use in the world, right? Like, so I feel blessed, like, to be able to to have some of that information and that experience and that wisdom that I was able to get from these people, and incredibly blessed that it influenced and helped to shape the way I navigate in the world.
Yeah. So we have some comments in the section, but not too many questions. A lot of people wanna throw their 2 cents in here. Sammy Katsali says Fernando Mejia. Oh yeah, Fernando. Fernando Mejia is also an awesome poet. You remember Fernando?
Yeah.
Claudia
Sure.
Lara, she's a dope poet. He says. Shilali says that she didn't mess up. She calls us cabrons and says it was at CSUN. I guess you met. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Sisan, that was where it was.
Okay.
Thank you. I was right, Silali. There you
Yeah.
go.
I'm pretty sure she said
Where are you
Corazon.
reading this stuff? I don't see any of it in the chat.
It's on my thing. It's on my
Oh, okay.
it's on my Facebook. Yeah. Sammy says he's gonna hit up Chapulin about an interview. So luckily, Chapulin has drunk himself to sleep by now, so he's not actually here and troll this interview.
we can circle around you, bro. We can get everybody in here. We'll just
Yeah.
We'll hold space for you all.
Shilali says yes. Frankie says early. She's really excited. And Joe M Mendoza. That's DJ something or other, right? Joey Mendoza, DJ Doja,
yeah.
Yeah. DJ Doja says he's like,
What's
good to
up,
see you.
Doja?
Yeah, real excited. He says that you have an amazing story. Doug Jacobs, he jumps in to say that he's working through the shame of having good heart. Wow, thank you for that insight. So that was really moved by the early part of the interview. So these are all the comments in the comment section that we have. Frankie, what's it's a wonderful life you've led. So what's coming up next?
So much, brother. So much. I thank you first off for doing this. Thank you for speaking to so many people, because I've enjoyed the talks, and it's fun because it's like there's so much we didn't get to talk about, and I'm so excited. Like I've got to now travel the world doing this work, using poetry as a healing practice. Working with street poets, which we didn't even get into, but being a director of community programs and school programs there, like, has been a phenomenal thing.
We have time. Like, why don't you tell us a little about that, and then I'll ask you that question again, like I didn't do it already.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but so eventually, then that'll just lead to it. Eventually, that Louis, I went with Louis one time to a men's retreat out in Mendocino, and 100 men. It was a beautiful experience. Poetry, ritual, like it was just phenomenal. And I met this man named Chris Henriksen there, who is the founder, executive director of Street Poets. I met him there in the woods, and he told me about this program. And they were going to have this van, and they were going to be doing some dope stuff, but nothing ever came from it, And then at that time, nothing came from it. And then eventually, they had opened up for a teaching artist position, and I came in, and we just hit it off because our philosophies are, the way we do things, were very similar. And so I've been able to do that, and I've found many opportunities from that. I found many opportunities from saying yes, brother. Trusting your gift and saying yes. So I've got, like I said, I've got to do workshops in South Africa, and I've got to lead ritual and workshops and ritual retreats in Sweden and in England, and I've been to South America doing this stuff. So it's just been a really phenomenal, beautiful thing that I want to continue to do. So, like, leading into that that question, I'm designing my programs and my offerings for when COVID's done, because right now, we're all stuck in our boxes, but eventually, we're gonna have to rebuild our world, our community in a different way. And I feel like I've been blessed to receive a lot of tools that might help, build foundation, that might help empower, young people to start stepping into their voice and stepping into their role in it. So yeah, I'm building my website, I'm building my offering, so that I can be able to do that all around the world and create opportunity and network and connection. I'm also having a couple, I've written a couple children's books that are getting illustrated. So I'm hoping that those will be out by next year. I'm finally going through an edit of my poetry book, which is long, long, long overdue. And then I'm doing a lot of writing, but a lot of creative writing. I think we've talked about it before, right? And it's like, where else can we use our gifts and our voices? So I have, I'm writing a screenplay. I'm writing I love storytelling. I'm a storyteller by nature. So, so much stuff, bro. So much stuff on the horizon. So much stuff on the horizon. I'm excited. It's like, I feel like that was a beautiful time in my life that allowed me, to become the person that I am today, and I'm continually evolving, right? Like I'm an elder in training, brother. That's the position that one day I'm going to hold. So I'm doing my best to not only create, a solid, genuine, heartfelt, compassionate action in my walk, but also trying to create sustainability for myself, for my loved ones, and for the future.
Yeah. Well, I wish you all the best, because these are the legacy building years, man. These are the make it or break it ones, right? So, and I think you are, yeah, all you've already done. I think this is, I have, like, I mean, I have, faith in you as a friend, but also, like, if I was a betting man, I would definitely put one on the bus stop. I definitely think, I think you got it in the bag. So, really excited to hear about these projects. So, where can people find them? Like, where can people check up on the progress of these things when they're gonna?
I have my website, but it's still being built. Busstopprofit.com, Instagram, all of it's Busstop Profit. You go to Instagram, Busstop Profit, Facebook, Busstop Profit. From time to time, you'll see me doing a poem, or I'm going to be leading a story circle for street poets soon, which is going to evolve. Is going to direct to my website as well. So just Busstop Profit. You'll find it, whether it's .com, whether it's on these social media platforms, or hit me up. You want to find out? Let's just sit and have a coffee. Well, when we can, we sit and have a coffee and have a conversation. That's my favorite way of telling people what's up with me.
All right, cool. All right, well, Frankie, thank you for joining me for this hour. And I'm sure we'll be talking again soon.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you, man. Keep it up.
Yeah.